Welcome to Open Mic. As you know, we have interviewed 5 exonerees on this show, and today is our 6th. But this one's a little bit different. Jeffrey Deskovic was convicted of rape and murder at 16 years old. He spent 16 years in prison when new DNA evidence was discovered to prove who actually committed that crime. Barry Scheck and the Innocence Project in New York helped him get out of prison. And since getting out of prison over 16 years ago, he has gone to law school. He has set up a foundation. He has helped free 9 other people for various reasons. This interview is amazing. Jeffrey Deskovic blew my mind. He's got a documentary about him. He's got lots of stuff that you can get into, which will all be listed here. And you're not going to want to miss this interview. So here we go.
You never know who you're going to see.
Be one guy one-on-one my whole career.
What you're going to hear.
Got a lot of desperate people in the city.
Or what they've got to say.
When you can take people inside of a crime.
That's what you're going to hear on my podcast, Open Mic. Find it where you find your podcasts.
So Jeff, you were a 16-year-old high school student and you were arrested for rape and murder. Can you describe what that was like?
Yeah, I would say it was surreal. I couldn't, I never, the idea of being arrested for something that you didn't do was a foreign concept to me, as a 16-year-old.
Well, what kind of kid were you? Describe, what kind of kid were you at 16?
Well, after school, I was kind of like the life of the party. Whatever sporting activity I would suggest would be what, the kids in the area would play. We'd play stickball, kickball, ride bikes, basketball, Monopoly, video games, movies, that kind of thing. But on the other hand, in school, I was quiet, I was to myself, and, I didn't quite fit in. And so that led to, and so I not fitting in. I was kind of like on the fringes of the high school society.
And why did the police, target you? Why do you think they targeted you?
Well, there was three factors. So first of all, the police interviewed a lot of students. So first of all, the police interviewed a lot of students from the high school, and some of them told the police that they might want to talk to me because I didn't fit in. Okay, so that was how they first got attracted to me. The next thing after that was that police argued that I was sentimental as a kid. And this was my first brush with death. And they thought that my emotional reaction to a classmate of mine who I barely knew, but was in 2 of my classes, a freshman, one as a sophomore, that was some kind of indication that I was sorry for what I had done. And then a third thing was they got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of what the actual perpetrator would be like. And I had the misfortune of matching that description.
So the person who was raped and killed was a classmate of yours?
Yes.
And that, the way you described those 3 things, that could have been anybody. That could have been me. That could have been anybody. That is it. So they focused on you, they arrested you, and we know now, the punchline is you didn't do it. There was no way you could have done it, but yet I'm reading that there's some kind of confession that you gave while you were in custody. Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. So for about 6 weeks, the police played this cat and mouse game with me, in which half the time they would speak to me as if I was a suspect, and the other half the time they would pretend like they needed my help to solve the crime. They would say things like, the kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear any rumors. Stop in from time to time. They would ask me opinion questions and congratulate me that my opinion was correct. They played the good cop, bad cop routine, and that directly intersected with my background. My father was never involved in my life in any way, and I began to look up to the officer who was pretending to be my friend as a father figure. in addition to that, I mean, before I was a teenager, the career I wanted to have when I was a cop was the career I wanted to have before I was a teenager was to be a cop. And those tactics of talking to me as if I would, Jeff as the junior detective helper theme, played into that. Eventually they got me to agree to take a polygraph test by telling me that some new information had come in had come into their file, and they wanted to share that with me, but I would have to first take and pass a polygraph test. So the next day, instead of going to school, I instead went to the high school for the test. Because it was a school day, my mother and grandmother thought that I was in school. They did not call around looking for me. And they drove me to Brewster. They took me from Peekskill, which is in Westchester County, New York. They took me to Brewster, Putnam County, so about 40 minutes away by car. So that meant I wasn't able to leave anymore on my own. I was dependent upon the police, and I didn't have an attorney present. I wasn't given anything to eat the entire time I was there. They gave me countless cups of coffee to get me nervous. Then I was wired up to a polygraph machine, and then they launched into their third-degree tactics. So they raised their voice at me. They invaded my personal space. They kept asking me the same questions over and over again. And my fear increased in proportion to the time. They kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours. And so through doing threats and false promises, and eventually I'm telling me that I wasn't going to be arrested. They just tell them what you want, you go home. And so eventually they broke me. And by the time it was all over, I collapsed into the floor into a fetal position, crying uncontrollably.
Did they say you failed the polygraph exams?
They did. They did. They started with that, and then they said. Then they started with. They told me I failed the test, and then they told me, what do you mean you didn't do it? Just tell us. Well, that's what they said. They said, what do you mean you didn't do it? You just told us through the test results that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it. And that's when the officer who had been pretending to be my friend, he came in the room and told me that the other officers were going to harm me, but that he had been holding them off but couldn't do so any longer, that I had to help myself. Then he added that if I told them what they want to hear, I could go home, that I was not going to be arrested. So being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, I wasn't thinking about the long term. I was just being concerned with my own safety in the moment. And I made up a story based upon the information they gave me in the course of the interrogation.
That is it's crazy. And after the fact, did you get the readouts of these tests, and did you get proof that you didn't fail them?
No, because the polygraphist claimed that the charts came up missing, and that so no one was ever able to independently review the charts.
Okay, so you were arrested right after you gave this, nonsensical confession?
Yes.
And listen, I know I'm going to be all over the place because you're supposed to tell a story, but you're a smart guy. You went to law school. You're now helping people. Looking back on that, this is fascinating. But looking back on that confession that you gave and made up an answer, can you now see why people? Because we hear about wrongful confessions all the time. Can you now shed some light on how easy is that for people to? It happens.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's been the cause of wrongful convictions in 25% of the DNA-proven wrongful convictions. And not only have adults given coerced false confessions, but particularly vulnerable populations include people with mental health issues and youth, which, I was a youth. So, yeah. People can say that they would never confess to something they didn't do, but until you're actually being interrogated, you're held, in isolation, you're deprived of food, they wear you down, and they're doing these psychological tactics that are designed to coerce you. And then you become in fear of your life. And then at the end, they, dangle this carrot out and claim you're not going to be arrested. You latch on to that and you just say whatever you need to say just to get out of there. No one is thinking about the long term. They're just being concerned with their safety in the moment.
And was this all on videotape?
No, There was no videotaped confession. There was no signed confession. There was, was no audio or video. It was just the cop's word for it. So when they came to court, they left the threat and false promise out of their story.
And now I think there's laws in most states that they have to be videotaped, correct?
Yes, some of the states. Some of the states. I'm not sure what the quantity is, if it's most or just some. So I just leave it at some as far as what I'll say.
So for sake of time, I mean, you had a public defender.
Yes.
You were tried by a jury.
Yes.
And convicted.
Yes.
And how bad was your public defender?
Oh, he was terrible. I mean, to be real quick about it, he rarely met with me. When he would meet with me, I try to explain to him that what happened, that I was innocent, and what happened in the interrogation room. He was always shutting me up. One time he told me he didn't care if I was guilty or innocent. He never explained to the jury the significance of the DNA not matching me. He never used that to argue that it proved that the confession was coerced and false. He never cross-examined the medical examiner who was committing fraud, who suddenly remembered he forgot to document findings that he had made 6 months after he supposedly made them. So he never cross-examined him. He never should have represented me in the first place because of a conflict of interest, in that the prosecution was claiming that another youth in the school had a consensual sexual encounter with the victim, and that was the way they were answering the DNA not matching me. But he never set the proper evidentiary foundation for that. So the prosecutor never got a DNA sample from him. He never even called him as a witness. He just made the unsupported argument to the jury. Now, on our end of it, because of this conflict of interest, in that this other youth that the prosecutor was saying had slept with the victim was represented by another member of that public defender's office, it prevented the defense from asking him for a sample. It prevented the defense from calling him as a witness. And lastly, we didn't decide if I was going to go with the jury trial or bench trial. My lawyer came to me one day and told me that the judge told him off the record to pick a jury because he didn't want to be responsible for finding me not guilty. My lawyer was supposed to put that on the record and ask the judge to recuse himself because, that wasn't proper for him to limit my decision in that way. And it also suggests that the judge was feeling some public pressure.
Wow. What was the misconduct by the medical examiner? I mean, can you be a little bit more detailed on that?
Yeah, of course. One more thing on the lawyer. My lawyer also never interviewed or called as an alibi. He never called as a witness my alibi. I was actually playing wiffle ball. What happened when the crime happened? But in terms of the medical examiner, so when an autopsy is done, there's written and audio notes which are taken contemporaneously as findings are made. And so it was only 6 months after doing that autopsy, only after the DNA didn't match me, that he suddenly claimed he suddenly remembered, right? This is 6 months later, hundreds of autopsies later, he claims that he remembered that he forgot to document medical evidence that he said showed the victim had been promiscuous. So in other words, to wrongfully convict me, they were willing to, trash her reputation. But he specifically fabricated that in order to help the prosecutor get around the fact that the DNA didn't match me.
Unbelievable. Was there prosecutorial misconduct other than that, or was that?
Yeah, that was a big part of it, but there was prosecutorial misconduct other than that. So, I mean, one day before officially getting the DNA test result from the FBI lab, he rushed to the grand jury to indict me, so he didn't have to present that. And secondly, that medical examiner had been complained of in neighboring counties by authorities, so he was moonlighting as a defense expert also. Whichever way the money flowed is the way he testified. The prosecutor was supposed to turn those complaints over to the defense, and we could have used that to, try to discredit the medical examiner. So that was another aspect of it.
And you had a pretty famous prosecutor.
I think what you're getting at, you're referring to Janine Pirro. So the Carl Vergara was the DA at the time I was arrested. The trial prosecutor was George Boland, but Pirro comes into the picture because he took office prior to my first appeal being decided. So she was the one, she kept the ball rolling against me. It was her office that was arguing that, I remember they argued that a negative DNA test result was no insulation to a guilty verdict, right? They argued that one, and then they stopped me from getting DNA testing several times. Then when the court clerk gave my lawyer the wrong information pertaining to the filing procedure in the habeas corpus proceeding, it was her office that argued that the court should simply rule that I was late without getting to my issues, which resulted in my being time barred. And then that decision was upheld in the next three courts, all at the urging of Janine Pirro.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable to hide the truth. It's so maddening. So how long was the jury trial? How many days was it?
I think it was about a week and a half, I would estimate.
And you're incarcerated the whole time?
No, I had gotten bailed out. I got bailed out. Yes.
Okay, that's surprising.
My mother had a boyfriend that was a business person, so he was willing to bail me out.
Did you recant the confession right away? Tell your family and tell your lawyer that right away?
Yeah, I recanted the confession. So to my family, but every time I tried to explain to my public defender that that was a false confession, and he never wanted to hear from me on that. He always shut me up, and I wanted to testify at the trial and explain to the jury, why I confessed, but he wouldn't allow me to.
So the cops testified that you gave a confession, and you didn't get on the stand and say the circumstances around the confession.
Correct. Yes. And the other thing is that the cops left the threat and false promise out of their story. So in that type of scenario, the only way those facts would have made their way on the record would be if he had put me on the stand. So
you're tried as an adult. You're
Yes.
convicted as 16 years old. You're convicted. You're sentenced to 17 to 25 years.
Well, I had been arrested when I was 16. I turned 17 before the trial started, and I got convicted, and I was given a 15 to life sentence, out of which I wound up serving 16 years because I lost 7 appeals, and then I went to the parole board and I got turned down for parole, and which resulted in my doing an additional year prior to being exonerated.
So you're 17 years old. You go to prison. I see that you were in solitary confinement for the first 28 days.
Well, my last 28 days, I did 28 days in solitary confinement in 1997. So that would have been like 6 years in. I did 28 days in solitary, yeah.
I mean, how horrible was that? Was that the worst of it?
Yeah, that was pretty bad because I'm in prison wrongfully. I've already been in prison like about 6 or 7 years, and I'm in solitary because I defended myself against people that were coming to stab me because, as far as they were concerned, I was a rapist. And then while in solitary confinement, for that, I got the news that I've lost in federal court because the court clerk gave my lawyer the wrong information on the filing procedure, and the court simply ruled that I was late. So I think that was the lowest moment ever in the whole experience.
I mean, being in prison at 17 years old, I mean, how was that being, you're going in, you're saying that people knew in the prison. I saw in the documentary, the Amazon Prime, that they were passing around leaflets so that the prison population would know that you were this terrible, sex offender. I mean, that had to have been the scariest thing in the whole world.
It really was. It was. I mean, just about the whole prison was hostile, and the ones who weren't didn't want to have anything to do with me anyway, just for the politics of it. It was very scary. I mean, just prison in general is scary. I mean, it was, stabbings and cuttings every day, and lots of other violence, and there was a lot of gang activity as well.
How did you get Barry Scheck's and the Innocence Project's attention to take a look at your case?
So I had there was an investigator the investigator who suggested that I write to them looking for assistance. She lobbied them from outside of their organization, and she got several other respected legal entities to lobby them also. And then I also got lucky that one of the intake workers, when they initially said no, the intake worker represented my case several times, coming up with different angles as to how the DNA could be used to constitute something new. And so that was how I got their attention and got them to take the case.
So tell me about the DNA. It's a little confusing. So, I know that you said that your DNA was not on the scene.
Right.
But what was the new evidence?
All right. So the new evidence. All right. So the DNA wasn't wasn't my DNA on the scene, but back then it was just the RFLP technology. So they were just comparing DNA at a crime scene to a particular defendant. The technology advanced. So in 1997, 98, the DNA database was created, which enabled us to take the crime scene evidence and put it in the database, and it matched the actual person. So I went from being able to say it's not me to it's not me, but it's him.
Got it. So at trial, they knew it wasn't your DNA.
Correct.
But they argued around that, as you mentioned.
Yes.
But in what year? So many years later, they were able to find. I don't see the guy's name here. What was his
Stephen
name?
Cunningham.
And I saw the interview of him. So it pointed to Stephen Cunningham. He had killed and raped another person, and he eventually admitted to the crime that you were convicted of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, he raped and killed a victim in my case. Then he left free as I was doing time for his crime. He killed a second victim 3.5 years later. And when the DNA eventually matched him, he then confessed that he was the person who had murdered and raped the victim in my case. My case, what's that?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
No, I was just going to say that, all the charges against me were dismissed on actual innocence grounds, and he was arrested and convicted of the crime.
And in the documentary that Amazon Prime did called Conviction, you talk at length about getting that news. And I know it took several hours to kick in, but tell our audience about that experience.
Yeah, so my cell door opened, and I stick my head out to see what they wanted, and they tell me you have a visit, and I asked them to double check because I'm not expecting a visitor, and they double check and they confirm I have a visitor. So I'm running down there, and I have my little visiting room shirt, like everybody keeps like their Sunday best shirt for when you make an appearance in the visiting room, and I'm wondering like who came to see me. So when I come inside I go in the visiting room, this woman is waving at me, and I nod at her, but like I don't recognize her, and I think that she's mistaking me from somebody else, or else maybe she remembers me from a different visiting room. So I asked the guard at the desk, where's my who came to see me, and she looks at me like I'm crazy and points to the woman who's waving at me, and she says, well, don't you know who that is? So I don't want her to cancel the visit. So I said, yeah, of course I do. And I just walk over there. And the lady announced herself as my attorney, and then she said to me, the items have been tested. And I said, well, what are you talking about? They're not supposed to be tested for another month. And she says, yeah, they've been tested. The DA pulled some strings, and it's been tested, and the results match the actual perpetrator. You're going home tomorrow. And I said, no, I'm not. And we went back and forth 2 or 3 times, and then I just had this state of mental paralysis where she literally sat there and held my hand for the next 3.5 hours, and my mind was spinning, and all these different thoughts were coming to my head, and I was mentioning to them, and one thought had nothing to do with the other. And every now and then she would break in and say, are you ready to talk about tomorrow? And I would say, no, look, that's not happening. I'm not going home tomorrow. Keep that away from you. I'm not entertaining that. Okay. And eventually what made it real towards the end of the visit is she told me that, there was almost time for the visiting room to be up and the visit hours to be over, and that they had to obtain clothing for me, like a suit, shoes, and do other stuff with the media as far as prepping them. And that's what really made it real. Of course, a few minutes after that, a different fear popped in my mind, which was, well, something's going to happen between today and tomorrow, and the DA is going to change her mind, and I'm not going to go home at all. I'm just going to stay in here. I was afraid to hope at the end, in other words. That's what I'm trying to do.
I don't blame you. But you did get out the next day.
I did, yeah. I did.
And how was, I mean, the feeling, how do you describe that?
I would say it was surreal. In fact, my first words at the press conference were, is this really happening?
And in your family, how was your family for the 16 years? You mentioned that you didn't see your brother for the last 10 years or some crazy
Yes,
amount.
that's right. Yeah, in the last 10 years, yes, I didn't see him, right.
You know, they probably, they don't know if you're innocent or guilty. You get out, somebody confessed. I mean, did they coalesce around you? Did they re-engage with you after all this?
Not really. I mean, they just kind of went back to living their life like they had before all this happened to me, and even during. I mean, if I had several sets of aunts and uncles. They would visit, disappear for 3 years, visit, disappear for 3 years. You mentioned my brother. My mother was the only consistent visitor, but in the last 6 years, I was lucky if I saw her once every 6 months. So in many ways, I essentially did the time by myself. So no, they did not coalesce afterwards. It was just the same type of thing as before.
Which I find really sad and surprising. And what I found really sad in your documentary, you mentioned that you were putting ads in the local Sacramento paper looking for pen pals because you were so lonely and so bored. I mean, that is just sad, and I was moved by that.
Yeah, no, it definitely is it definitely was very sad. But I want to say that, in a cosmic kaleidoscopic type of way, my pen pal arrived just in time, because he showed up like he responded to the ad and in the paper. We corresponded for about a year, and I was pretty much at the end of my rope. I mean, I was openly asking him, look, do you think I should just quit, just stop fighting? Should I just kill myself and just be done with all this? I'm never going to get out of here. And he gave me the moral support that I needed, and and then we chit chatted about some sports and other stuff. So it was kind of a distraction. But I wrote him like 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, I was at the end of my rope, and I fear that maybe I may have tried to do something foolish had he not arrived. But it does go to the matter of am I being lonely? Am I essentially doing the time by myself? I mean, otherwise I wouldn't need to resort to placing an ad for a pen pal. I'd have regular contact from family members or friends, but that wasn't what my reality was.
I mean, it sure sounded like your family basically abandoned you.
I feel like in a lot of ways that's true.
And then you get out, and you filed some lawsuits. You were compensated very well, several
Yes.
$1 million. In verdicts and settlements for the wrongful conviction, and then you decided to go to law school.
Yes, yeah. So it took about 5 years to be compensated. It was extremely difficult living up until that point. I mean, I lacked stability of housing. I bounced around from place to place. I nearly went to homeless shelter. I was always passed over for gainful employment. I had to deal with the psychological after effects of my experience. There was the stigma. You've been in prison wrongfully, yes, but you've been incarcerated for 16 years. How much that rubbed off on you? Culture, technology was all different. It was difficult building a social situation. But while that was happening, I was also doing a lot of advocacy work. I was speaking. I was writing for a weekly paper. I was doing media interviews and meeting with elected officials. I got a scholarship. I finished a bachelor's degree. I got a master's degree. My thesis was written on wrongful conviction cause and reform. And when I was compensated, I decided to start Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice. Because I wanted to be able to help free people who are wrongfully imprisoned, and continue to pursue the policy changes. So at some point, it became not enough for me to sit in the front row in the courtroom. I wanted to be able to sit at the defense table, and I wanted to be able to represent some of the clients, and in pursuit of that dream of exonerating others as an attorney. And so I did go to law school, and as of October 26th, I was officially admitted to the bar.
What year?
This year, in 2020.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what a great cherry on top of this ice cream cone. I mean, I love that you did that and you went to law school. How did you find law school?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag. I mean, I think overall I enjoyed it. Look, I love I love the camaraderie. I love the fact that I'm someone who believes in chasing dreams, and to be an attorney was chasing for the purpose I mentioned. That was a dream, and I did want to be an attorney when I was a kid as well. So in multiple ways pursuing the dream. On the other hand, though, I mean, law school was very difficult. Everything rides on one test, the final. I was always pulling my hair out. I was always afraid I was going to fail everything. I essentially worked a job full time. I didn't slow the advocacy work down of speaking or doing media, meeting with electeds, or even traveling to other states in connection with advocacy. But the level of opportunities increased. And so I don't like leaving opportunities not pursued. So I was often learning 4 to 5 classes worth of material in 6 to 7 weeks. So that was kind of a high pressure situation. At the same time, though, I kind of left my imprint on the school. I mean, I coordinated and organized and spoke at quite a bit of wrongful conviction events on campus. And sometimes I would come into class and I'd sit down. The professor takes attendance and he starts teaching about one thing or another, and then he stops and calls me up, and he wants me to speak about false confessions, and I got to sit back down again. He's going to go over case law in a different area. One of the prisoners' rights class was a lot of fun because the professor would cover would explain things about the prison, go over case law, and then he would call on, well, is this the way it really is in real life? So I kind of I kind of enjoyed that, and a similar experience in terms of it was called criminal procedure investigation, like in New York. So different rules of evidence pertaining to identification and interrogation. So in a lot of ways, I had a blast with it, except that it was such a highly pressurized thing, and I really hated being chained to a classroom. And whereas I mean the real action was in the field doing advocacy work.
So you started this amazing foundation, the Jeffrey Deskovic Justice Foundation.
The Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice.
Thank you. And we'll have all the links under your bio so people can find out more. I've gone to your website. Great website, very informative. You have helped free 9 people for various reasons, couple exonerees and other things, which is amazing. Jeffrey, when I'm watching this, you have millions of dollars. You were treated completely unfair, and you're not bitter. You're not flying off to an island and building a mansion. You're helping others who are in the same position. And I can't tell you how shocking and surprising and exciting it is watching your story. I'm blown away by you, man. I'm just blown away that you're taking this money and you're going to law school and you're helping people. What motivates? I know what motivates you. I don't even know the question to ask you. I'm blown away. So, thank you for what you're doing for these people. They have got to be elated that they have somebody who really understands it.
Yes, they are.
And taking their money and helping them selflessly. What is it about you that's letting you do this, making you do this?
My purpose, and I believe that my purpose in the world is to fight wrongful conviction and for justice reform, and that's really what allows me to do that. And I feel like I've had educational opportunities and other opportunities along the way that a lot of other people don't have, and so I feel a strong moral sense of obligation in that way. So really, that's what allows me to do that. And I think that because of the circumstances of my life, that I do have the chance to be an agent of change that probably wouldn't exist if I hadn't gone through everything that I did. So I look at it that way. And look, I need some silver lining out of all this, Mike. Okay, I need my suffering to count for something. So we got to make the system more accurate, and I've got to help other people and prevent this. So if I can do that, then I can take some solace in that. There's some aspect of it that I am looking to try to build a legacy and just leave the world a little bit better than how I found it. And so all of those interrelated reasons are all factors that go into it. And I think that the reason why I'm not angry and bitter is look, I want to enjoy my life as much as I can. I don't think I can do that if I'm angry or bitter. It's not like I would be adversely affecting people if I was angry or bitter. And I feel like I lost so much. Why would I want to, in effect, lose the rest of my life? And the vehicle that allows me to actualize that is I take that energy that I would feel and I channel it into the advocacy work that I do.
It's truly amazing. And you're not just helping 9 or 10 people right now. You're also trying to get policy changes and laws changed. What kind of traction have you gotten there? What kind of change have you been able to make?
Yeah, quite a bit of traction. So in New York, we were able to help pass a law that mandated police videotaping interrogation, identification reform, DNA database expansion. Then, as an advisory board member of the coalition group, it could happen to you, which the foundation is part of. We were able to pass 3 additional laws in New York. So oversight for prosecutors, a tweak of that law, and then discovery reform. So now both sides can have access to the same information. And we now have chapters, the coalition group, again, which the foundation is part of. I'm an advisory board member of. In fact, myself, the founder, and one other person are the only 3 people that are active in all 3 chapters. We have chapters in Pennsylvania and California. So another legislative victory that we recently got in Pennsylvania was automatic expungement. So people that have been exonerated or been acquitted or had charges dismissed against them, their records are automatically cleared now. In terms of what we're working on now, so we're trying to repass that Commission on Prosecutor Conduct in New York. The District Attorneys Association of New York, not wanting to have any oversight, they brought a lawsuit against the law, and they made a bunch of arguments that it was unconstitutional. The judge rejected all their arguments, but found a problem in the appeal procedure. So the whole statute was declared unconstitutional. So we're trying to repass that, making the tweak that the judge referenced. So we're working on that. And another thing we're working on in New York is to, there's exceptions in that law that mandated videotaping interrogation. So they've made exceptions for sex offenses, murder cases, and drug offenses. So we're trying to get rid of those exceptions. In Pennsylvania, we're working on, again, the Commission on Prosecutor Conduct and exoneree compensation. So Pennsylvania is one of 15 states that does not offer compensation. In California, we're working on, again, passing the Commission on Prosecutor Conduct, and we're trying to eliminate capital punishment. So those are the policy reforms that we're working on now.
What do you have working with you?
What's that?
What kind of team do you have working with you on all this important stuff?
I have a part-time policy director of the foundation who had started the bigger coalition, and we have a bunch of volunteers. But that's also why we're trying to raise money. We're looking for donors. We're looking to add board members because look, if we could get these kind of results, on a shoestring budget. I mean, imagine if we were really armed for bear. If we really had attorneys, investigators, paralegals, other essential personnel, on staff. Imagine if I had, was able to make the part-time policy person full-time. Imagine what kind of results we would actually be able to get. So I'm trying to, so I have a whole plan put together, a budget, and our points of progress and our outcomes, and just hoping, to at some point reach people, that are willing to help in one way or another, because we could be a lot even more effective than what we are. But I think we have a proven track record of success. We're the only organization started by somebody who, was exonerated, using some of their compensation that works to, free people. That's one way we differentiate ourselves. Another way is most of the organizations in the field, they only take on DNA cases. DNA is only available in 5 to 12% of all serious felony cases. So we take on both DNA and non-DNA cases. And as it's turned out, only 2 of the cases we're working on involve DNA. And in terms of, policy issues, we take on issues that other organizations like privately agree with us, but don't like pursue. So for example, the way the Department of Corrections and even the parole board, I mean, the way the Department of Corrections administers the sex offender training program, for example, right, which people who are convicted of sex offenses are required to complete. The parole board wants to see them finishing that. So there's a guilt admission requirement tied to that. Just like at the parole board, they want you to express remorse and, take responsibility and not say you're innocent. So in referencing the narratives of exoneree cases, the other organizations reference these issues, but they're not pursuing them as policy issues. The foundation is. So I'm not worried about stepping on, people's toes or, and anything like that. So those are all, differentiations.
It's unbelievable. The one thing that when people hear these stories, they ask me about, what are they asking about? Immunity.
Yes.
Where are we at in this country with stopping, protecting judges, bad prosecutors, and bad cops from doing all the dirty tactics that they did to convict someone like you and my other friends who I've interviewed on Open Mic? Where are the laws? Is there any movement to try to hold these people accountable?
Well, there's a commission on prosecutor conduct, which I mentioned I'm working on, and that that would be an independent oversight board that would have subpoena power and have the authority to investigate allegations of prosecutorial misconduct. So we're trying to pass those, but that's just one aspect of it. As you referenced, prosecutorial immunity is a huge problem. So any misconduct that a prosecutor does, I mean, they could threaten witnesses, they could withhold evidence of innocence, as examples. And if they do that after an arrest has been made, then they have immunity for it. So you would not be able to sue them. So I think that people are talking about immunity. I think that that's the first step towards doing it, but we're at the infancy of that. And it's not like there's any bills circulating around in terms of that. California did criminalize withholding evidence of innocence, making it any felony. But as far as I know, nobody's ever actually been prosecuted from that. So I think that criminalizing clear-cut intentional prosecutorial misconduct would be, another thing that would be deterrent. That would be a deterrent. Judges often get away with making rulings that are, against case law. And as you alluded to, the whole Now the first word of it, there's an immunity that cops have. I mean, not in terms of wrongful conviction. I'm trying to remember the first word in front of the word immunity, but basically it means that it doesn't matter how egregious a constitutional right violation was. If nobody's ever been held, no one's ever been held accountable for it before in a similar circumstance, then the cops are able to get away with it. And the judicial reasoning on that as well, the defendants haven't been, duly informed that, that they could be held accountable for that. But in doing that, what happened, the net result is that the law is frozen in time. If no one's gotten sued before for a constitutional violation, then people can just keep getting away with it. And so there's a frozen in time, but more importantly, people whose rights are being violated, they have no legal redress.
Well, I'm hoping that someone like you gets these laws in our country fixed, that the bad cops and the bad prosecutors will be held accountable for doing the stuff that they did to you and so many other people that we're finding out about.
Yes.
So, last question, and how are you? My listeners and viewers are going to want to know, how's your life these days? How is Jeffrey Deskovic doing now?
Yeah, I would say I would say that I'm doing well. I feel like I'm in a much better place, psychologically, mentally. The more time goes by, the more grounded to the world I am, the more I learn technology, the more tied into the world. I definitely have benefited from doing receiving a lot of treatment mental health wise and dealing with the psychological after effects. I'm trying to be a little bit more balanced. I do enjoy playing chess. I like going to new places, new places, new experiences, new activities. I like trying new food. I like going to sporting events. So, and I'm slowly starting to build, a small social circle. So I think all those things are positive developments as I just try to, put together my entire life. And I do feel like all the advocacy work that I do is definitely cathartic and healing. So
Did you like the show The Queen's Gambit?
I did. Yeah, I really did. I mean, so when people get their starts in chess from unusual places, let's just put it that way. Yeah, but
My 8-year-old daughter watched it. Now we're playing online together.
oh
And
wow,
so it's really an amazing show. What is the Queen's Gambit? Do you use that in your game?
the Queen's Gambit is a reference to a certain opening. Openings in chess being the first 5 to 15 moves. They're kind of preset. And there's only so many ways people can answer it. And if you really know the opening, you know that you not only know those initial moves, but you also know all the different possible responses to those moves, and you know what your counters to those responses are supposed to be. I usually play the French defense as my opening rather than the Queen's Gambit, but I have played against the Queen's Gambit before.
Well, I hope to one day meet you, Jeffrey, and play chess with you and get to know you. I'm really happy for you. I'm blown away by your story. Thank you for being on Open Mic. Thank you for all the work you do. I'm so sorry for those 16 years that you had. Was it 16?
Yes, it is 16. Yes.
16 horrible years that you didn't deserve. Your story's heartbreaking. I hope that lots of people watch and listen to this podcast episode. Check out his website. Check out the movies. Donate money. Help Jeffrey Deskovic and his foundation. And you're a real gem. And congratulations this year on becoming a lawyer and joining the club. I know you're going to do amazing things.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me as well.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you for watching this episode of Open Mic with Jeffrey Deskovic. An amazing story. I was moved. I hope you were moved. Share this with people. Share this with someone who needs to hear from Jeffrey and the amazing work. Go check out his Amazon Prime documentary. It gave me chills. It made me really sad. Check out his website. Donate some money if you can. Subscribe to the Open Mic podcast. Comment below on things that you'd like to hear about and have us do in the future. And, we have to talk about these people who are being wrongfully convicted, spending 16 years, starting at 17 years old. This story blew my mind. Anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting Open Mic.